It's Friday night. It's the preview show. It's the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello and welcome to another season of the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. We're back after a relatively short summer break. We are already starting the 2020-21 season, and we're going to be previewing the Clarets Premier League fixtures and perhaps sometimes this season Cup fixtures as well. We'll see how that goes. I am joined, as ever, by the host, well, just the main man himself, the absolute god of the preview show, Dave Statman Roberts. Dave, welcome back.
Thanks for building me up, Natalie.
Always, Dave. I will raise you to the heavens. You know that I am very much a Dave Roberts fangirl. You know that. Now, we're going to need to. I guess we probably need to reintroduce the show to perhaps some new listeners, don't we? I mean, we're going to have hopefully our past preview show listeners who've already become fans of the show and are going to be joining us for a second season. But we might also have some new listeners as well. So I wonder whether we give them a little bit of a taste of what, why don't you let our listeners know what the preview show's all about, Dave?
Well, yeah, I mean, for any existing listeners, they'll have an idea of what we've done throughout last season. I think we did pretty much all the Premier League games. But for anyone else who's joining us perhaps for the first time in the preview show for the start of a new season, it's maybe worth giving a quick overview of what the show's all about. We do look forward to our next fixture. But we do also take a look back at how Burnley have fared in corresponding matches. So if we're playing away, we'll look at the away games. If we're playing at home, we'll look at the home games against each opposition team. And hopefully we can provide some insight into the match, as well as reminding people of the best moments from past meetings and maybe some they'd perhaps like to have forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, of course, then brings us on to the next section. What else do we have in the preview show apart from match build update?
Well, we usually have a quiz question, and we will have a quiz question at the end of the show. But when we did our last preview show, we were that was for Brighton, wasn't it? We played Brighton, the last Premier League game of the season. We didn't leave our listeners with a quiz question because it was the end of the season. But we will be keeping that in. The quiz question will be coming back at the end of the show. We'll leave you with that. And we have made a few format changes as well, but we'll surprise you with those as we go along. I think it's probably the best idea.
Yeah, it does. And then finally, will we be launching another Fantasy Premier League season, Dave?
Well, we have already, yes. We've tweeted it out quite a bit over the summer, and without wanting to give too much away, we've had quite a lot more entries than we had last season, but we'll leave that till we come to that section later on. And we've got an update. Wait, are you allowed to have a league table so early on? I know newspapers never used to print league tables until they played about 3 games, and now they wait till, well, half the teams have played, and they put a league table there. The good news is we're not in the bottom 3.
No, that must be annoying the Premier League and Sky Sports immensely that they haven't got us in the bottom 3, but there you go. So, listeners, the preview show is back in its glorious format, which is going to be well known to most of you, but tweaked slightly for some improvement. So just to recap, 3 parts: the look ahead to the next fixture with a full section full of stats, then a quiz question, and then the updates from the Fantasy Premier League.
Opposition stats.
So let's delve straight into this week's preview, shall we, Dave? We are, of course, away at Leicester City, Sunday the 20th of September 2020, which is live on BBC One at 7 p.m. Even though it's week 2 of the Premier League, we are playing our first fixture of this season after a bye that we had in the first week. I think we should really just start then, Dave, with what's the recent history? Delve straight in with some stats.
Yeah, we are going to prompt for the recent history rather than in the past. We've looked at the stats and gone right back and looked at the win, draw, loss record in all fixtures. But I think we're going to focus it a little bit more this season, look at just the recent matches. And we've got to make a cut-off somewhere. And I've made the decision, and the decision is games played since our promotion to the Premier League in 2009-10. So that will include any Championship games, because obviously we've had a few seasons back in the Championship in between as well. So as well as considering all results in this time, either home or away, depending on whether we're home or away for that game, we'll include any cup games as well, and we'll give a separate breakdown of our Premier League meetings. So looking at our recent record against Leicester City at Leicester, we've played there 9 times since 2009-10. However, we are yet to pick up an away win during this time. There have been 4 draws and 5 defeats in all competitions. That's Championship and Premier League. There's been no cup games. So for anyone who needs it spelling out, that's a win percentage of 0 during this time. And all of our most recent 5 visits have been in the Premier League. That's between 2014 and last season. And Burnley have drawn twice and lost 3 times in those 5 games.
Ugh, that doesn't make pleasant reading, does it? I think even I would have got that stat, Dave, with the win percentage. That's, hopefully at the weekend. Now's a good time to play Leicester, I think. We'll get them early on when they haven't quite bedded in yet, and we'll put some changes to that. Okay, well, the next section then, Dave. Burnley's last win and last top flight win, please.
Yeah, well, as we've just mentioned, there haven't been any away wins at Leicester since 2009-10, so we have to go a little bit further back, and that's back to November 2007 for the last time we came away from Leicester with a victory. That was a 1-0 win, first half goal from Andy Gray. You may remember for that one, Steve Davis was in caretaker charge. That was in between Steve Cottrell's departure and Owen Coyle being appointed. He only was in charge, I think, for the one game, and that was a 1-0 win at Leicester. And we have to go back quite a bit further, though, for our last top flight victory. That's going back almost 52 years. That was a 2-0 win at Leicester's old ground, Filbert Street, and that was back in October 1968. So we've got to go back quite a little bit further. In that game, Frank Casper scored a penalty just before half-time, and John Murray added a second goal just after the interval, and the match also finished 10-10. Both captains, that's Burnley's Colin Waldron and Alan Clark for Leicester, were sent off during a clash in the first half.
Yeah, that is quite a way back. Were you at that game, Dave?
I wasn't born in 1968, thank you very much.
Moving swiftly on, and we go then to our first brand new feature, which is our highlight section.
We're going to have a highlight every week, and this gives an opportunity to go back possibly to some of the earlier games, or it may well be a more recent one, but this one is going back a little bit further. We'll have one highlight and one low light from the past meetings, either home and away. So as we're looking at Leicester away, we're interested in those particular matches. And I'm going to break my rules already here. I know I'm saying that we're going to pick a highlight, but I'm not just going to pick one single highlight this week, if that's allowed.
You're so reckless, Dave.
I know. I'm going to pick a sequence of 5 results instead. It's actually between 2002 and 2007. Burnley played 5 times at Leicester's new stadium, the Walker Stadium, as it was known for sponsorship purposes. In those 5 games, all of which were in the Championship, Burnley had 4 1-0 wins and a 0-0 draw in a remarkable series of away results. So that's 5 games we played, 4 wins and a draw, and we didn't concede a goal. However, as we've mentioned already, since that 1-0 win in 2007, we are winless. So we had a really, really good run, and then we've had a poor run since then.
Definitely. Okay, new feature number 2 then, and let's go the polar opposite. What's been our particular low light?
Well, our low light's a more recent game, and that took place in April 2011. Eddie Howe was the Burnley manager, and Sven-Göran Eriksson was in charge of Leicester City. The Clarets came away with a 4-0 drubbing. The scoreline and the manner of the defeat were combined with the fact that it was a late season game, and it pretty much ended Burnley's outside chances of reaching the playoffs that season, which, as we know, were never came to fruition in 2011 under Eddie Howe.
God, I'd forgotten all about Eriksson being in charge of Leicester. God, that's a good.
That's why I'm here.
It is.
To remind you.
And this brings us quite nicely on to then our next new feature, which is Hero.
Yes, we're going to have a hero and a villain every week. So we're going to pick someone, probably usually a Burnley player, or maybe a manager or someone else, Burnley related. So our hero, first of all, in relation to past meetings at Leicester, is Ross Wallace. We're going back to October 2014. Burnley trailed 2-1 at Leicester. But we were awarded a free kick late into time added on at the end of the game. And who should step up but Ross Wallace? Curled a free kick over the wall past a diving cast to Schmeichel, who perhaps hadn't set himself quite well enough up for the free kick, and earned Burnley a valuable point, sent the travelling Burnley fans into a state of delirium and sent us home happy. I think it was in the 6 minute of injury time, something like that. So it was a really, really valuable point early on in that season. But Ross Wallace is our hero for this week.
Lovely. You love to see it. I miss Ross Wallace. He was a good player. New feature number 4, 5. I've lost count. Who's the villain then?
Well, yeah, as we said already, the villain will usually be an opposition player or manager, but this week I've gone a little bit left field and chosen an official instead. And when we come to the next feature, you'll know why. Andy Madley. You may recognise the name. Burnley could have come away from Leicester with a point last season had it not been for yet another dubious decision from the video assistant referee. On this occasion, it was Andy Madley who somehow ruled out what looked like a perfectly good goal by Chris Wood. After reviewing the incident, he deemed that there'd been a foul on Johnny Evans. There was a very slight touch. It was never getting to the ball. So despite the contact being negligible and the ball already being virtually over the line with no chance of Evans getting to it, the goal was ruled out and Burnley didn't get a point. So Andy Madley, video assistant referee from last season, is our villain.
Yeah, for those of you who've tuned into the podcast show this week, we looked at that. We gave out some end of season awards from last year, off the wall ones, and the most ridiculous VAR decision by quite a heavy margin was that precise incident, and I still can't believe that it wasn't given. Well, let's give him a little bit of slack then, and let's talk about who the referee is going to be at the weekend.
Well, that's kind of tying in with that last feature, really, because unfortunately, Andy Madley has been once again appointed as the VAR for this Sunday's game, as he was for the corresponding fixture last season. And I think this is either some sort of trolling of Burnley FC by the Premier League, or maybe it's just that no one involved in the process actually bothered to check. Either way, I think we'll view any VAR reviews with added interest on Sunday evening. Lee Mason, by the way, he'll be the referee in charge. He took charge of his first Burnley match at Turf Moor against Preston North End in 2007. It's fair to say he didn't have a good start. He missed a blatant handball on the line by Preston's Matt Hill in the first couple of minutes of the match. It should have been a red card to Preston and a penalty to Burnley, but it wasn't to be. I would say he's improved a little bit since then, although he was the referee who gave a late penalty at Turf Moor, you may remember, when Aaron Ramsey did a spectacular swan dive under very minimal contact from James Tarkowski. So let's hope there's no such dodgy decisions from either the referee or the VAR this time.
And then our final new feature in this preview is going to be our one to watch. Please, Dave.
Yeah, one to watch for this week, as well as the ever-present goal threat from Jamie Vardy, which we already know quite a lot about. Harvey Barnes is our one to watch for this week. He's a Leicester player who still seems to be improving. For the moment, he's still their player, although that hasn't stopped him being linked with a move away, including reported interest from Liverpool. He's still only 22, and he is, of course, the son of former Burnley striker Paul Barnes. I think we mentioned this in the preview shows last season. His father was actually born in Leicester, but never played for Leicester City during his career. But Harvey Barnes was born in Burnley in 1997, while his father was still a player at Turf Moor. This was shortly before Chris Waddle agreed to a swap deal. That involved Andy Payton being brought in from Huddersfield Town and Paul Barnes going in the opposite direction. In terms of Harvey Barnes as a player, he scored 6 goals last season, contributed 8 assists. He provided the assist for both goals when Leicester City beat Burnley 2-1 in this corresponding fixture last season, and he also scored Leicester's goal in the match at Turf Moor, which obviously was the one that we eventually won after Nick Pope's penalty save, and then we came back and got a winner, didn't we? And for that reason, he's the one to watch. We picked him out as our one to watch for this week's opponents.
Good stuff, Dave. Now, one thing that I'm not letting slip this season, and I'm going to carry on from last season, is I don't want to leave it there. And I don't think you do either. Because I know you, and I know the depths of Statman Dave's knowledge. So why don't you delve into that bank and give our listeners your miscellaneous stat of the week?
Statman Dave's Stat of the Week.
Yeah, this week's stat of the week is Premier League / top flight related. We're going back in time a little bit, as well as looking at the context from where Burnley are this season. Season 2020-21 will be Burnley's 5th consecutive season as a top flight team. And it's a level of consistency the club hasn't experienced in the last 50 years, and indeed in the lifetime of many Burnley supporters, myself included. In addition, it is the club's 4th longest stint in the top flight. If anyone's interested, the other longest stints Burnley have had in the top flight, between 1947-48 and 1970-71, we had 24 seasons. That included, obviously, a title-winning season in 1959-60 in the middle of that. We had 13 seasons with a break for World War I in the middle, between 1913-14 and 1929-1930. The first 9 seasons of the league, 1888-89 to 1896-97, Burnley were in the top flight, although obviously to begin with there was only one division. And then our current run of going into our 5th season is the 4th best. We've gone 24, 13, 9 and 5. So we've got another 4 seasons to go. That'll be our next target, maybe after survival this season, to try and get to 9 seasons and improve on that. But it's a really impressive record. Getting a 5th season, it's the first time that's happened in the last 50 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is a really good stat. I really like that. Well, obviously, a key to trying to get another season in the Premier League is usually getting off to a good start. I know Dash has always liked it when we get off the blocks starting that season. Well, the European season, didn't we? We got that win away at Chelsea on that first game of the season, and Dash was a big fan. But in that respect, I guess Leicester away is probably not the fixture that we were after. What's your gut feeling, Dave? You know, Leicester are a good side, and they're going to be pushing for Champions League and top 4 even. Can we go to somewhere like Leicester and get a result?
We can do. I mean, we've discussed, haven't we, the last season's match, and we were unlucky maybe not to come away from there with a point, with that decision going against us. So I think we're more than capable. Away games we know are tough, and we've looked at the stats in the past, and our win percentage away from home is less than roughly 1 in 5. So if you win 1 in 5, that's an average over time. So over a season, you're probably going to get an average season. You're going to get 4 away wins. And this is maybe one of the tougher ones, not as tough as some of the teams will play, but it's certainly in that next level just down. So it's a tough match. We've got the BBC cameras there watching us. We've got the luxury of actually being on one channel rather than having to switch over from one channel to another at half time, which is what happened last time we were on BBC in Project Restart. So yeah, I mean, it'll be good to see the smirk taken off Gary Lineker's face when we get 3 points at the end of the game on Sunday. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I just want us to be back again. I wish we were in the stadium, obviously, but yeah, it's going to be nice to get some kind of normality to our fixtures and get back into a new season. I can't wait. Quick prediction then, Dave.
Having said all that, I'm probably going to predict a draw. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
You never predict a loss. You're always just like, a loss is this. If you predict a draw, it essentially means that you think we're going to get beat, because you won't ever say it. You won't come out and say, I think we'll get beat.
No, I did last season quite a few times.
Did you? Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't remember. I don't remember you thinking that you would do a draw because you don't want to do it. I'm going to predict a draw as well. I'm going to say 1-1. So, yeah. Let us know what you think, guys. You can tweet us at NoNayNever, or you can email us at podcast@nonaynever.net. Let us know what your predictions are. I usually say at this point, if you listen to this on the way to the ground, but obviously you're not. So when you sat at home waiting for this to come on the television, send us your predictions and we'll see how we all get on.
Fantasy Premier League update.
And then finally then, Dave, closing off the show, we need to relaunch again this season's Fantasy Premier League. Now, what on earth happened last year?
Well, Bennet Haworth won. Bennet Haworth was the overall winner across the whole of the season. I think he was up there pretty much all the season, certainly in the top 5 or 6. and came out as the overall winner at the very end of the season. So congratulations to him. But it's going to be a tougher task this season because we've got more entries. We mentioned earlier in the show, and we'd already had more entries, and we hadn't even done a preview show yet. So we had 164 teams last time. We've already had over 200 entries, actually 218 entries already. I think there's actually 3 on. I think they must have to wait until the next weeks go in there to join. I think what we'll do is we'll leave the entries open for another week or so while we're having the podcast, and then we'll close it off. We'll allow people to enter maybe till the end of week 2, and then we'll say, right, we'll have no more entries coming in after that. But we've had 218 already. That's more than 50 higher than last season. And if anyone is interested, I can give you we'll obviously tweet this out as well and put it on our social media channels. But the code, if you're interested, is G3QK0F for Freddy. And that is definitely a 0 rather than an O. I think we had 1 or 2 people who tried and it was not correct. So G3QK0F. And that's all in lowercase.
Excellent. And do we charge them for it, Dave, or is it just?
Of course not. Totally free to enter and just for fun. Although we will be keeping track of progress. We'll be in our preview show podcast throughout the season. We'll be mentioning who's the movers and shakers. And I think I'm right in saying there may even be a small prize for the winner. We had a prize organised for last season's winner, did we?
We did, yes. So Bennet Haworth, who we talked about, who was the winner of last season's league, did receive a prize. I was going to send him a No Nay Never sticker, but producer Matt just got something really good and sent it out. So yeah, there is a prize, guys. I can say this season. There is a prize. And you might be wondering how on earth you actually win such a prestigious league. Well, we have got a treat for you because earlier on this week, we caught up with last season's winner, Bennet Haworth, to get all the hints and tips. So, Mr. Bennet Haworth, welcome to the No Nay Never podcast and congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was a great fun year for me, fantasy football wise.
Yeah, I bet it was, and it was quite close actually. Towards the last couple of games of the season, we weren't quite sure in the previous show who was gonna top it. I think it was about 3 or 4 of you. So, I mean, obviously, it's a great achievement to come higher than me because I did so well.
Of course,
yeah. But obviously, 100 would you have 153 runners? I think last season, to top all of those, and there was just a consistency across the season to stay in the mix, and then obviously just shooting ahead when you needed to. I guess what we wanted to know from you is how did you approach it? What was your strategy?
So I think there's a few important things. I think one of the key things with fantasy football is they price the players based on how they performed last season and not how they should have performed. So your average player will score about 25% of his shots over 2 seasons, but they'll go up to 50% sometimes when they're in form, and they'll go down to 10% when they're out of form. And so, for example, a good example this year, by the stats, Chris Wood should have scored about 20 goals, and Danny Ings should only have scored about 14. But of course, what happened was the opposite way around. And if you look at Danny Ings' price this year at 8.5 million and Chris Wood is 6.5 million, there's a lot of bargain to be had for going for Chris Wood over Danny Ings. And what you're looking for really is where players underperformed their stats, their expected goals. They had lots of shots in the box but didn't score many last year. There'll be low prices this year and you get them, and hopefully they pick up on that. So that's a key thing.
That's really interesting, and that is something that never ever occurred to me. I always get quite stressed when I'm doing a fantasy football league because the price restrictions. I always want to put more salary in. I want to put all the the superstars in because you think you're going to get all the points, but actually, it never occurred to me that of course there'll be players who don't perform as well this season, or maybe had an absolute anomaly last season, or those that had an absolute shocker, or maybe had a little bit of an injury. And I think
Oh, sorry.
So no, it's all right. I was just going to say, Bennett, I think that like Jay this season is probably a really good example of this, in that
Yep.
we know that he can do a hell of a lot better than he did last season, because he was only just coming back into the side. And obviously there was a few injuries in there as well. And we actually expect him to play better this season and maybe score more goals this season. But of course, his price is relatively low compared to what we think he's going to be because of his performance last season.
Yep, of course. And I mean, the key thing as well with fantasy football players is minutes. What you don't want to buy people who are risky transfers, and that's one of the reasons I didn't have Ings last season, because his legs have been made of glass previously. And he had a good season partly because he didn't get injured. And I mean, interestingly, on the expensive players, they are reliable, but they're only really value if you plan to captain them.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
the number one thing, I think one of the ways to be quite good is to be a bit boring with your captaincy, and you always play it on Mo Salah or
Yeah.
Raheem Sterling. You never go, oh, Chris Wood's got Norwich at home, I'll take a punt on that. It's generally not sensible. But what I do try to do, there's this idea of upside chasing, where I try to spend all of my transfers going between those very expensive players to always have the best captain.
Yeah.
So I
That's
only
a really
have,
good idea.
you only have one very expensive player, say Mo Salah. He's got, I don't know, Leeds this week like he did. And then you go, okay, he's got Chelsea next week. I don't want him. I'll ship him out, bring Aubameyang in, captain him. And then the next week you get rid of him and bring in Sterling. So you're never wasting that money on people you aren't captaining, but you always keep the best captain each week. Because those double
These
points
are
are
good
key.
tips. These are good tips. I like it. You'll be very surprised to hear that none of this has ever registered in my brain when I've been doing my fantasy football.
My girlfriend will tell me I spend far too much of my life studying these. There's a very good, on Twitter now, a very good fantasy football community. There's quite a lot of fantasy football
Yeah.
podcasts where a lot of these ideas are, they're not all coming from me. There's almost quite an academic community of it, which I really enjoy kind of listening to and being
Yeah.
part of.
Definitely. I mean, I think the strategy behind it is something that I always get really excited. I think people who've known me for a long enough time know that outside of my job and the podcast, I'm a poker player. So sort
Yeah.
of game theory management is something that I'm always interested in, and the strategy behind it, particularly with things like chess games, and how do you win and how do you beat a system. So
Yeah.
you'd think this would be right up my street. I suspect that one of my biggest problems is I don't have time to commit with just everything else I've got in my life. But this year, Bennett, I'm going to really go for it. And I think one thing that I would like you to talk me through, and again, regular listeners will know I'm rubbish at these. What on earth are all of these special tricks and things that like these?
The chips.
Yes, what are those? Explain to our listeners what on earth they're supposed to do with those.
Well, so the chips, there's 3 chips. There's a triple captain chip, which allows you to get 3 times the points for your captain rather than double. There's a free hit chip, which allows you to get an entire team of your own, one team for one game week only. And then there's the bench boost, which allows you to play all your squad of 15 rather than just 11 players. And the key way to navigate to use these is with the blank and double game weeks. And I think kind of more casual players get surprised by these every year.
Yeah, yeah, guilty.
But right. But they are usually in the same place, and in fact, from now on, there'll be an extra bonus one. So the winter break, which is going to happen in January, will lead to only 10 teams playing one week, and then 30 teams basically playing the next week, 10 teams playing twice. And similarly, towards the end of the season, when you have kind of the FA Cup and the League Cup kind of finals all building up towards the end, the bigger teams, usually, importantly, City and United and Arsenal, the ones you want and Liverpool, the ones you want your big players from, they'll miss games because they're in the cup, and then they'll play 2 games the next week. And that's where these chips are really powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if you play your bench boost when you have a team of 15 players all playing twice because they've got a double game week, you get 30 players that week instead of the standard 11 because you get 15 playing twice.
Oh, God, yeah.
And so, for example, last year I scored, I think, 124 points or something that week, which is
Wow.
twice what you could hope for in a normal game week.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Because you've got 3 times the players. And so what you want to do is you line up your wild card. So you usually a common strategy is you get the players who are going to play in the week where there's half as many games. And then you play your wild card, bring in 15 players who are all playing twice the next week. And then you play your bench boost and play them all at once.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a note in my diary to remind me to do that in the winter break.
Yes, and the other key one is, and you can take a -4 points to get someone in for this. If, say, Mohamed Salah has Fulham at home and Leeds at home in a double game week, that's when you play your triple captain. You wait for kind of a sweet spot of 2 very easy game fixtures in one game week, and you basically get Mo Salah 6 times, because 3 times in the first game, 3 times in the second game against really bad teams. And that's where you might, really score some points. I seem to remember a couple of years ago, Aguero got a hat-trick against Fulham and then 2 goals the next in the same game week, but 3 days later against someone else. And so if you had him, you got 5 goals for 1 week as your captain,
And then obviously if you triple captained in that week as well and you played all your boosts, you get a massive boost of points.
You've got a massive boost of points, from that.
See, that now makes sense to me. I just needed a champion to come on. I like to learn from the best, Bennett. I needed a champion to teach me.
And to shout someone out on Twitter, there's someone called Ben Krellin, who basically puts together like a timetable of when these blanks and doubles are going to happen. So if you want to go and have a look at who's missing what when, he's got some lovely spreadsheets up there.
Definitely. No, we will do. That is fantastic. So what I get, these have been amazing, and this has got me more engaged than poor Statman Dave's managed to do for a whole season of preview shows. Do you think then, and we'll leave you on this one, do you think you can do it again? Do you think you can be a back-to-back champion?
I can try. I've not had the best start this season. But
it's one game.
Like you say, it's a long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and
it's a marathon, not a sprint.
So
I'll
be doing my best, Romans. Obviously.
Excellent. I love this. I will be rooting for you, and I will keep an eye on there, and I'll try and see how we go. Bennet, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And if you're free at any point, we'd love to have you on again, maybe a couple of times in the season, just to check in on progress of our current champion and see how the season's going. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Brilliant. Well, take care, Bennet, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Cheers. Take care.
Yeah, there's definitely a prize, Dave. Like I say, I think at the time, Matt, I was going to send out some stickers to the winner, and producer Matt swept in there and got himself a really snazzy prize. So, guys, there is a prize. I can say this season. You're playing not just for pride. You're not just playing for the glory of being the known and never fantasy football winner, but you're playing for something tangible as well. So get your entries in. I need to do mine as well, Dave. I haven't done it yet, and so because I usually do so well at the fantasy league, I've actually already giving you all a free week. So, it's just
giving us a head start.
Definitely. So what do we do about the dream team then, Dave? Why don't you explain to some of our maybe new entrants what that means?
Well, they're now called Kings of the Week, so I think they've got a bit of a sponsorship thing going there, but it's still Dream Team as far as I'm concerned. There was no match at the weekend for us, of course, so there's no Burnley players in Game Week 1 Dream Team, but there were 2 Leicester players, as well as Jamie Vardy. He scored 13 points. He was joined by new signing Timothy Castagne, I think is how you pronounce it, who's a 24-year-old Belgian fullback. They played £20 million for or something like that. The highest scoring player, though, was Liverpool's Mo Salah. He picked up an impressive 20 points in their 4-0 victory over Leeds United, who, of course, were playing their first Premier League game for 16 years. And although it's probably too early to be focusing too much on league tables, we do have 1 or 2 familiar names in our top 10. Is it worthwhile as having a mention of who's up there?
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah. But particularly Paul Gibson. Paul Gibson's got 101 points, which is very impressive. He's way out in the lead at the moment. And then going down, I'll just whiz through these. Elliot Clegg, Chris Harris, Mushy Hansen, Rob Greenwood, James Riley, Chris Stanworth, Say, Joseph Golby, and Max Robinson, who I remember Max Robinson was up there, I think, quite a lot of last season as well. So it is early days, but we'll see. I think you maybe need probably 4 or 5 weeks for it to start to pan out a little bit, and then even after that, there's a lot of movement. But it's certainly runners and riders changing places quite a lot in the early stages.
Yeah, I've definitely got at least 2 people in that top 10 who I know. So, I'm going to stay impartial, obviously, but I will.
You can't fix it.
I can't. Do you really think I would have come bottom last season if I could have fixed it? I'm pretty sure I would have sorted that little nugget out if I'd have been able to find a way to cheat. But no, I will be. I can't help it. I'm a good friend. I'm going to be rooting for the people that I know. So we'll see. Well, obviously it's still early days, Dave, and we know what the league is like. That the league, the Fantasy Premier League, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You can't get over 100 points in the first week, but Natalie Bromley's Dingle Bells have given you a bye, and I'm going to overtake you next week. So don't get too excited. But do keep an eye on your team. Use your transfers and your bonus chips wisely. I'm going to make a special effort this season to learn what they are and how I'm supposed to use them. But more importantly, keep listening to the preview show throughout the season for regular updates and hopefully some hints and tips as well. We might be able to get a few people in there to give us some lowdown. I think when we launched it last season, we had that great fantasy football guy, wasn't he? Who gave us. I might get him back on. He was really good. Do you remember?
We did, yeah. We had him on the, I think, first show of the season, didn't we? That's right.
Yeah, we did. Was he an Arsenal fan?
He was, yes.
Yeah, you're right. I might get him on again to give some hints and tips to the other part of the season. Let's do that. So good luck, everybody. Submit your teams and, just do better than me. That's all you need to do.
Statman Dave's quiz question.
And then finally, Dave, closing us out, let's start as we mean to go on and get these quiz questions out. What is this week's question?
Okay, a simple one, I think, this week. This week's quiz question is, who was the first Burnley player to score a goal for the Clarets at Leicester City's current stadium?
And how do our listeners submit their answers?
Well, there's 3 ways. They can tweet us or send us a direct message on Twitter. That's at NoNayNever. Email us, podcast@nonaynever.net is the email address, or reply to the post for this preview show, which will go up on the No Nay Never Facebook page. And we will, of course, reveal the correct answer at the start of the next preview show.
Excellent. Well, that is all we have time for the start of the preview show, the first episode of this season 2, and a preview looking ahead at the Leicester game. And we're all very, very excited to get on that pitch and get the Clarets campaign off to a positive start. My thanks as ever go to producer Matt for editing this and putting it together and getting it out there for you. But mainly my thanks go to Dave Statman Roberts, who just puts in a ridiculous amount of work and has worked hard over the season to find ways to make this a little bit different and keep it fresh and keep you all entertained for a season. So Dave, you're amazing and I adore this show so much. So thank you very much. Do enjoy the game at the weekend. Godspeed to all of you travelling from your bedrooms and your kitchens to your living room to watch the Clarets on terrestrial TV. You should all be able to tune in, cheer the boys on and let us know what you think of the game afterwards in the usual channels. We will be back on Tuesday with a look at both the Leicester result and whatever happens or happened last night at the Sheffield United Cup game. So do tune in for that as well. And that's all we've got time for. Thanks again to you for downloading and coming back and listening to the preview show for a second season. We adore you all, so thank you. This has been the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.